This is the corrections video for page 9, which you were supposed to do back on Wednesday, March 25th. So this was when we started working on proportions, which is really just the fancy way of saying an equivalent ratio. So let's start with number 1. You have 3 times something, and you have 4 times something equals 9 over 12. So remember, whenever you're making equivalent ratios, equivalent fractions, equivalent anything, what you need to do is you need to make sure you're finding what do you need to multiply both of these by. So 3 times something and 4 times something, that something has to be the same. If it's 2 different numbers, they're not going to be equivalent ratios. So 3 times something is 9. 4 times the same something has to be 12. If that doesn't work, then that's not an equivalent ratio. So 3 times 3 is 9, and 4 times 3 is 12. So you know it's an equivalent ratio because the something that you're missing is the same. Let's take a look at number 3. When you're working with number 3, you've got 10 divided by something and 15 divided by something equals 2 over 3. So in this case, the something still has to be the same. It still has to be the same number that you're dividing into 10 and 15, or it won't be an equivalent ratio. So, or it won't be a proportion, which is just a fancy way of saying equivalent ratio. So 10 divided by something is 2, 15 divided by the same something is 3. And we know that that's 5. 10 divided by 5 is 2. 15 also 5 is 3. So you know you got it right if this one is the same. Let's take a look at number 5. For number 5, your somethings have been divided by the same number to get 2 over 3. So your missing numbers are not going to be the same this time. The 6 is the same, but they've given you the 6. So something divided by 6 is 2, something divided by 6 is 3. Now if you don't know your division facts very well, or if you just prefer working with multiplication, that's fine. Just work backwards. 3 times 6 is going to get you that something. 2 times 6 is going to get you that something. So remember, division facts and multiplication facts are kind of mirror opposites to each other. So 2 times 6 is 12. 3 times 6 is 18. And then if you go the other way, 12 divided by 6 is 2, 18 divided by 6 is 3. So you've still got a proportion, it's still equivalent, and that's of course because the 6 is the same. And let's take a look at number 7. Number 7 gives you the beginning ratio, and it also gives you the something that they're multiplying or dividing by, in this case 6, and you have to figure out what the proportion is. What is the equivalent ratio? So 7 times 6 is 42, 10 times 6 is 60. And remember, this is a really good way to practice your multiplication, your division facts. So if you think about it, 7 times 6 is 42. 42 divided by 6 is 7. 10 times 6 is 60. 60 divided by 6 is 10. So you can always do these backwards or forwards, and you'll be able to end up with kind of getting a better handle, practicing those division facts and those multiplication facts, and understanding the relationship between them. All right, so if we take a look at number 9, on number 9, they've kind of cut out the work that we normally do in our heads. So what they're asking you to do is you've got 1 over 3, and you need to find the something that will be equivalent. So 3, how do I change 3 into 15? If I take my 3 and I divide it, I multiply it by 15, by 5, I get 15. And whatever you do to the bottom, you have to do to the top. So 1 times 5 is 5. So there's your proportion. There's your equivalent ratio, equivalent fraction. These are all terms for the same concept. And let's take a look at number 13. For number 13, you have a ratio, 11 to 12 equals 44 to something. So you're looking at 11 and 44, and you need to figure out what the relationship is between 11 and 44. So how do I turn 11 into 44? I have to times it by 4, which means I have to times the 12 by 4. This is the thing that always has to stay the same in order to get an equivalent ratio, in order to complete your proportion. So if 11 times 4 is 44, 12 times 4 is 48. So there's your equivalent ratio, your proportion. All right, let's take a look at number 17. It says, for questions 17 to 20, write the proportion and then solve for the unknown. So what you're going to need to do is you take a look at what's written on the question, and you think about, how would I write it without the words? How would I write it just as a math sentence, not as an actual language sentence? So if you take a look at number 17, it says 1 hour is to 60 as 5 hours is to something. So we've talked about how to change the words into the math sentence. 1 hour is to 60 as, which means equals, 5 hours is to something. So we've taken the first ratio, 1 hour is to 60, and we've written it without the words. We've just put down how it would look as a math sentence. And then the as, so whenever you see as when you're dealing with proportions, that's your equal sign. Equals, and then at 5 to something. So that's the thing you need to figure out. How do I turn 1 into 5? Well, I know that 1 times 5 is 5, which means I need to times 60 by 5 to get my missing and complete my proportion. So 1 times 5 is 5, 60 times 5. Now remember, you can do an outside calculation for this, or you can shortcut it by just pretending like the 0 isn't there. 5 times 6 is 30, plus the 0 that you ignored is 300. That's always the easiest way whenever you're multiplying things that have zeros. So 1 to 60 as 5 to 300. 1 to 60 equals 5 to 300. That's your proportion. All right, let's take a look at number 20. Number 20 says 5 grapefruit are to $1.95 as something grapefruit are to $5.85. Now, I've told you this before. Sometimes when you're dealing with money and decimals, it can be useful to use a calculator. So in these kinds of cases, that would be okay. So you take your question, your word problem, and you write it as a math sentence. 5 to 195 equals something, however many grapefruit, to 585. So when you're doing that, what you need to do is, how did I turn 195 into 585? So the easiest way to do that is divide. Now, like I say, you can use a calculator. So I'm going to take my, move this over a little bit. I'm going to take my 585 and I'm going to divide it by 195. Because remember, when you're working back and forth on the other side of those equal signs, you can use multiplication when it gets bigger, or you can use division when it gets smaller. What we need to do